Welcome to my Google slide presentation. This is a PowerPoint about gravestones in the card game Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. Now, in case you didn't already know, this video is heavily inspired by videos like these from the YouTuber Fleur, where they discuss a game and discuss certain aspects of the game. I was heavily inspired by this, and he's done it in the game that he likes. So I'm going to be doing it in the game I really like, PvZ Heroes, and this is a PowerPoint about gravestones. This was going to be a bit different than his video. His video normally he tackles a thing at a time and talks about it. What I'm doing is I'm splitting up my PowerPoint into sections, and because of how many gravestone cards are actually in PvZ Heroes and how many of them aren't really relative to the things I want to talk about, I will only go over a select few when I'm mentioning the subjects. Now, in the future, if you want to see me cover every single card in something that I'm talking about, and feel free to comment below and let me know if you want that. But then also videos are going to take 10 times longer to make if I end up enjoying doing this. So we'll see. Direct Gravestone Synergy. Headstone Carver is the golden boy of direct headstone synergies. I just said headstone, not gravestone. Direct gravestone synergies. He survives turn one really easily. You know, he only dies to Meteor, he dies to Bonk Troy, he dies to Primal Potato Mine, and he dies to Spadal Super. There's probably a few other ones in there, like playing a one drop with a Puff Shroom that he dies to. But besides, honestly, those niche scenarios where there is answers to him, but most of the time, your headstone cover is going to survive on turn one. Uh, Once it survives, giving you +1/+1 to your gravestones is really good, especially since a lot of cheap gravestones started as 2/2s, like Swashbuckler and Monkey Pirate. I know that's not a 2/2, but still. These cheap gravestones, they start off with low stats, and the idea is that you put a lot of them down, and then you grow the strategies, like, you know, Swashbuckler buffs your pirates, or you have something like Yeti, which grows and freezes, but this directly gives stats to gravestones. So basically, if you're running a gravestone deck, you're doing really good. But the cons of a headstone carver is that one damage you're doing to them every turn is kind of pinging the block meter, and you know sometimes that's good, but most of the time you preferably don't want to be pinging the plant hero for one, and then they block and get a good superpower they can use for later. And also, you kind of only run this with gravestones. It's literally not useful anywhere else, and that's normally fine for cards, but it is still a con to this card. Next, we have Graveyard. It's a very cheap environment. You know, alongside Black Hole, it's the other one cost environment on the zombie side, besides Trapper, because I just forgot about Trapper like 2 seconds ago. But you know, the element surprise is always fun. Putting anything in here is always a good time, especially when you pair it with Headstone Carver. You can basically give anything a 2/1 buff with this combo, and it's really, really good. And you know, you could put a cowboy in this. A deck that I've been doing lately that I'm having a lot of fun is putting the Zombie King in this, and then it's just, you know, surprising, like, oh shit, I didn't know the Zombie King was going to be in there. The cons of Graveyard is that it breaks really easily. If you're running any more than 3 copies of Graveyard, what are you doing? And even then, you can still find yourself being like, I have Graveyard, but I don't have anything to actually use it with in my hand right now. And also, the +1 attack is nice, but it isn't game changing, you know? It isn't gonna make you win the game on the spot, but it is still nice to have. Moving on to Grave Robber. Now, back in the day before the balance patch, you wouldn't really use this with gravestone cards, and even nowadays it still isn't particularly used with gravestone cards, or even used at all because of the 1 health. But if you are doing a grave deck with Infinity, this is a good addition to add because, you know, even for a 1 drop, it is still a good damage, and they most of the time still have to answer it. And you know, you're already playing graves, so you may as well have this on the board while you're playing graves. You know, it can, but you know, especially if you're on turn 3 and you play this in a Swashbuckler, even if the Swashbuckler gets both blocked or the Grave Robber gets blocked, you're still doing 3 damage to a plant, which is basically taking it out. But yeah, it dies really, really, really easily. It's kind of laughable how easily this card dies to literally everything in the game. This used to be a 2-2, and the only reason why this got nerfed is because Conman and Pirate X was so good. This really did not need to get nerfed. But hey, what are you gonna do about it? Next, we have actual gravestone cards. But these are going to be the actual, gravestones, not just stuff that affect gravestones. First, we have probably the contender for the best gravestone in the game, Pogo. It's in really good removal. It keeps a unit off the board, and you can basically you can take out two things with this. You can take out a little guy and then take out the big guy that they played on turn 4 or 5. If they ramp to it. It's also insane card to be put back into a gravestone. I've said Pogo Mug here as well. You know, putting this back into a gravestone over and over again with encrypted or mug. People keep on bouncing the plants, making them unable to play stuff. Though this falls into similar categories with Headstone Carver and Grave Robber, where it can die easily and it kind of pings the block room with 2 damage. Because in the early game, 2 damage isn't too bad, but when you get into like turn 4 and 5, you don't want to really be doing 2 damage to the plant over and over and over again. Because it does add up the 2 damage, but it still is quite weak. But this, don't get me wrong, I'm saying the cons of this card, but this is like one of the best, if not the best, gravestone in the game. Next we have the Gargolith. It's a very good finisher if you have the right tools, and if the plant hero basically can't remove this, you can really sweep house, especially if you're running all the Gargs in your deck. If you're running like a Rodeo Garg, or you have like even a Zomba. I know that's a silly strategy, but still, even then, you keep on popping off and popping off this, and you're getting block meter from your opponent too. You're getting 2 block meter every single time it comes out, so it is making it so it keeps being able to hit face over and over again. A lot of big problems with a lot of cards like this, besides the removal aspect, is that if they block your big guy, there's a bunch of damage, is basically all for naught. But this always has a chance to hit the block meter. It's like a one case scenario where like they play like a Mars fly trap somehow and like they get the block back. It doesn't matter. What matters is that when you play this, you basically if this hits face, it's always going to hit face, or it's going to block. But you have a good chance of this hitting face with the taking away the block from them. And also, it's very good to hit face with your other Gargs, it keeps them alive. And even though removal does hurt if you have grave removal, this does also solve a big problem with Gargs, where you're not getting Shamrocketed, you're not getting Squashed, you're not getting Doom Shroom, you're not getting Ice Board. You do get punished hard by grave removal and, like Cool Bean or Grave Buster, which we'll get to later. But this is one of my favorite cards to use. Next, we have Lion Dancing Zombie. The element of surprise. Even though all gravestones have the element of surprise, this card especially has a good element of surprise due to the fact that you can move it to any lane and you can basically take something out. And it basically does 6 damage. Like it does 3 damage to the plant in front of it and the plant hero. It can even do 9 damage if you have team ups in the way because of the strike through. And yeah, this is a very good card to use in a control deck. Though after you play it, it basically will die after you play it, because the plant hero is most likely not going to leave this alive if they can help it. Finally, we have Tomb Raiser. Now, this isn't particularly the most effective grave card, but it's a very fun gravestone card to use. 5 damage is very good to face, and if you hit it, you get a random gravestone. Most of the time, that gravestone is worth it. Even if you get a 2-cost gravestone, you're still getting a bunch of value. You're getting 5 damage to the face and an extra minion on the board. Of course, the dream scenario is you get Zombat from Tomb Raiser. Though all my times I've been playing Tomb Raiser, I've never gotten Zombat from Tomb Raiser. So, unfortunate, but it is what it is. And it does synergize very well with the other cards in its class, like Laser Base and Pogo, and clearing out these lanes with bouncing or with strike through to let this guy go face and actually get the value of it, making the minion. Though without these, it is kind of hard for this card to break through, and if it gets fronted, it's most likely going to die. That free health makes it very fragile, especially on turn 4, and it will probably die to a Berry Blast or something similar the next turn. And Grave Removal hurts quite a bit. Oh, I forgot I had another one. Sumo Wrestler. It's also one of the best gravestones in the game. A very good stats for a 2-drop. It gives you a lot of control over, moving stuff around, and especially for certain heroes who can't play in the water, being able to move a threat from the water back to the land to deal with for only 2 costs is really good. Also, not too related, but it does work good in sports decks. It's like the sports card to run on turn 2. I don't know why you'd be running like energy drinks on me, even though it's fun. Though, because of how long sumo has been around, any person who has any semblance of a brain cell who's playing against you could probably be able to predict the way you're placing your sumo, and could probably play the plant in the lane of the sumo on turn 2 with no other plant, so it has to move that. Like if they play a twin sunflower in front of it on turn 2. Now we can go over the bad gravestone cards. Now, gravestone removal is really important because it basically is the entire counter to gravestones. I mean, obviously, it's the entire counter to gravestones, but it's very important. First, we have Gravebuster. It's very cheap for gravestone removal. You can get insane advantages over removing like a surprise Garg or a Gargolith for only 2 costs and be able to play something after. Yeah, you make insane trades. It isn't always the best option, especially when there's multiple graves in play and you don't know where's where. And also, you can bait out a grave buster on like turn 2 with like a shitty swashbuckler or a sumo wrestler. You're not actually expecting to stay alive. So then, when it comes to the later turns, a planet hero doesn't have any answer unless they get a top deck or they already have a second one. And yeah, it only takes out 1 gravestone. We actually have Blockbuster, which is the different version of a Gravebuster. It takes out a bunch of graves at once, and basically it completely counters Mix Up Gravedigger, which is like one of the best gravestone related cards in the game. And also its stats are pretty fine. I mean, 3/3 Bullseye is nothing to laugh at. If this didn't have Bullseye, these stats would be terrible. But the fact that it destroys a bunch of gravestones and it can do 3 damage Bullseye to face is really, really good. Though this card can easily brick if they're not running gravestones. And you are still using 4 sun compared to the normal 2 to take out a gravestone. So you don't normally play this if the planet hero. If the zombie hero has only played 1 gravestone, normally you'd if you're having problems with multiple gravestones and Mug, you can run this. But if you're only seeing the odd few teleportation zombie or gentlemen, it's probably better to just run Gravebuster. Next we have Cool Bean, the aforementioned asterisk in this, because it doesn't really remove gravestones. It kind of just stalls it out. It's still very good, if if you're using Mug, it can do a lot. If they play a bunch of gravestones on like turn 6, you can do this and freeze them all, which is very cool, very cool to be able to, stall them out. Also, the freeze synergy is nice, especially if you have Winter Squash. Here, I don't put it in the PowerPoint, but it is a thing that I realize now is that Winter Squash with this is very, very good. And you can do it with more graves than Blockbuster. Now next we have Leaf Blower. This is also a big asterisk. This is the worst type of grave removal in the game, besides Grave Flick, which I will not be discussing in this, because it's basically the exact same as this. I guess you can bounce the grave, and I guess if you're running an amphibious deck, you could use this. But like even then, this thing is a 3/4. Like you have to play this into environment, and plant environments are pretty expensive where it comes. There's only an odd few where it's quite cheap. So you have to play an environment and then actually play this on top of the environment and actually be able to bounce the gravestone there. It's bad, is what I'm trying to say. Next, we're going to discuss other grave-related things. We have Mug, which is, I talk about it quite a lot, but it's one of the best enablers to gravestones in the entire game. A big thing about this is that you reactivate abilities. This is even good for non-gravestone cards. Like if you play a Brain Vendor on turn 3, and then most likely it's going to die. It's not going to die because it's a 2-1 and not a big issue. But then you play this on turn 5, and anything goes like the Gravestones, and it pops out, and you get 3 brain suspend on the trick phase. It also protects your cards unless they have Blockbuster, Corby, whatever. And a 5/5/5 not too bad. I mean, most of the time in a decks where you're running this, your finisher is just clearing out lanes of Pogo or Sumo, and just having this hit the plant hero for face 2 or 3 times. There's also that weird bug where when the zombie hero plays Gravebuster, plays mixed up Gravedigger, the plant hero can press on one of the zombies before they go into Gravestones and actually be able to see what order they're going to come out. That is unfortunate, but this card is still, they may be able to see what graves are in which direction, but they can't, unless they have direct motion rule, they can't really stop the abilities reactivating. Next we have Encrypted, a decent superpower. It can, it's similar to Mix Up Gravedigger, where it can reactivate an ability and you can protect a guy. Even if there's no ability, it's still very good to be able to protect something inside of a gravestone. A big thing about gravestones is that they pretty much soak up damage unless there's a plant or strike through. They soak up damage, which is very good. But also, you can't really play it on turn 1 unless you play Swabby or Goat. And it's kind of, you don't really want to use it on a zombie that's really buffed to reactivate its ability. Like if you've got a guy who's went from a 2/3 to a 4/5, you don't really want to use it on them. And unless it's like a really specific scenario. Spyros is a similar thing to Leaf Blower, where this is just really bad. Like you can see, it's similar to the issue with the vision bug or glitch or whatever. Is that you may be able to see what is in the zombie gravestones, but if you're playing this to see what it is or you've already played it, you also need an answer. Just because you know where the graves are and what they do, most of the time you can just play around that normally. You don't need to run a card like this. You can just front a grave. There is like some specific scenarios where you could have use, and I guess in that one daily challenge puzzle party, it's nice to be able to see what the graves. This card is bad. Okay, this card is bad, and it's not good. A big part about graves is the psychology. Depending on which lanes you put it in, planet heroes could assume different things. Like when you put a gravestone in front of a thing on turn 2 and you're playing Hearty, the planet heroes will think, is that sumo wrestler? That could be sumo wrestler, but it could also be this or this or this, and you can really think of the psychology and get them to bait out stuff. And also, they don't know what's in the gravestone unless they're running Spyrus for some reason. And it won't work if your opponent is annoying and just doesn't care and starts ramping with Sunstream over and over again and they get 6 million Sun on turn 3 and then kills you immediately because they're broken stupid. Thank you for watching my presentation. If you want me to make more videos like this in the future, let me know. Hopefully I can improve my way of speech and not be stuttering over my words all the time. But that is a matter for the future when I make more of these. If I do make more of these, and if you people in my Garlic Gang enjoy watching these, and I'll see you all later.